Happening with the Broncos. Former Broncos coach, or former Broncos player, has now joined the coaching staff, and I'm happy that I'm not talking about Todd Davis. Todd, would you take that jump right now?
No.
Coaching DBs.
Yeah, would you feel comfortable coaching anything but linebackers?
Yeah, I think I can coach anything on defense. Yeah, probably anything on defense. I don't know if I want to coach offense.
Yeah.
Tight ends?
Maybe so. Tight ends, it's okay.
Seems like running backs coaches have the easiest job.
Why?
Just because I feel like that'd be the easiest to coach. Like I feel like half of what they do, more than half of what they do, just like isn't really coached. Like I guess like you got to teach them their reads. It's like front to back or back to front, but like it's not rocket science. I feel like.
Isn't that all you have to do with the quarterback is teach them their reads?
That is rocket science. That is rocket science.
I feel like maybe protection probably be the hardest. Like when they might hear this is what has to happen when they check to this, like how your gap changes in protection or your man changes. I feel like that's probably the hardest part of the
that makes sense.
job.
That also makes sense. I mean, that's why all the rookies screw up.
Yeah.
What is it? The Broncos have had so many coaches recently. I think it was Nathaniel Hackett that said tight end was the hardest position outside of quarterback.
Why?
Maybe he said it was receiver. I can't remember, but coaches have made an argument for tight end and receiver as being the hardest positions outside of quarterback on the entire field. Do you agree with that?
No. They're saying hardest to coach or hardest to play?
Hardest to play from a player's perspective.
Heck no. DB, I feel like DB is way harder than receiver.
Oh.
Yeah, you do have the same thing but backwards.
Guy, but do everything backwards.
Exactly,
Absolutely.
yeah.
That's way harder.
But tight ends, like I kind of get because you got to block like a 300-pounder and then outrun a safety. Like that's like a tough combination.
What about linebacker? I got to get the call in, make the checks, change the defense. I got to get a 300-pounder off me, and then I got to guard everything from Laporta to Debo Samuel if he's in the slot.
Yeah, I mean that's a good case there
coming
too.
Out the
Yeah.
backfield, like
it's the same thing as like DB, where it's like a tight end but backwards, and you have to be smart.
yeah.
Did you ever hear the story of your teammate Brendan Langley?
Oh.
Which still,
I guess there were a lot. He was the one involved in the fight in the airport, right? Or was that a different teammate?
No, you mean the
Todd?
beatdown at the airport.
Right, the one-sided beatdown in the airport. We all saw that one.
Yes.
But the story of the Broncos use a third-round pick. A third that's pretty significant.
Yep.
For him to be a cornerback for them. Broncos have had a terrible luck with third-round cornerbacks. Hopefully that doesn't stick with Riley Moss as well. But they used a third-round pick on him. And after 2 seasons, I think, of playing cornerback, he changed to wide receiver for a little bit, and I believe he told Mike Kliss in an interview that he didn't like going backwards, and that's why he wanted to switch to wide receiver. It's
Yeah.
like, wait.
Because he'd barely played corner in college, and like they drafted him to play cornerback, but he just like wasn't comfortable playing backwards.
Which is wild.
I understand from his side why that would be difficult, but also the Broncos maybe figure that one out before you draft
You
him to
would
be a
hope
cornerback.
so.
yeah, what did he play in college?
It was a lot of receiver.
Receiver, and
I think
it was both.
Was it like 3 years of receiver last year at corner?
Yeah.
It was something like that. Yeah.
And he didn't like going backwards, so he
was an
wanted to
adventure.
go forward.
I don't know if I like switching guys once they get to the league. Like switching them in college is one thing, but even like drafting a left tackle, knowing that you're going to make him a right tackle, like I think it's just you're signing yourself up for like disappointment. I don't like it.
Yeah.
DeMarcus Walker had something like that. He was on the edge and they moved him inside, right? And he played really well when we went to the Titans and went back outside. Is that how that worked? Or was that Bears?
Well,
The
he was-
Bears,
and then signed with the Titans.
Well, wasn't he playing forefront? Like he was playing DE in college, and then the Broncos drafted him and tried to make him an outside linebacker, and it didn't work out.
Yeah,
and they tried to put him again in the middle, and it just it didn't work. He was so like everywhere.
They really messed with him.
Yeah.
I mean, that was...
Because he had to
felt
put on a
really
bunch of
bad
weight,
for-
too.
And
To
then
go
lose it.
inside
Yeah,
and
exactly.
yeah.
And do that all with within 2 years. Plus, you're adjusting to the NFL lifestyle, the NFL game, the NFL coaching, everything like that. That's got to be really tough because when you came in, you pretty much stayed the same size, and then after a couple of years is when you tried to lose weight, right?
Yeah, I didn't have to do like any big transitions like he did. Like, I think that's another thing. Like, as a GM, we talked about how we feel like we could put together a good team. Like, if you play running back in college, I'm probably going to draft you to play running back, not move you to tight end. Or if they were trying to make Lamar a wide receiver, or make Tim Tebow a tight end, like, I don't get it. I really don't.
Has there ever been a quarterback who moved a receiver and it worked?
Julian Edelman?
Julian Edelman. Yeah. There is one. Because they tried that one over and over again.
Was he a quarterback in college, Julian Edelman?
Yeah, he was, yeah.
Was he his senior year? Did he play any receiver?
I don't know about that, but I know he did play at some point in college quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I mean, like there was the Ohio State guy went to the Browns.
Terrell Pryor also
played.
Yeah,
Terrell Pryor.
Did
he had a couple big games, but it didn't really work.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're talking 2, 3. Like, was Taysom Hill a quarterback in college? He was a pure quarterback. So I mean, we're talking of all the history of the NFL that we can remember off the top of our head. We're talking less than a handful.
Yep.
So, like, and Sean, actually, well, let's continue this conversation after I officially welcome you into the DNVR Broncos podcast. We got Henry Chisholm, Todd Davis, you here, Zac Stevens rolling with you today. And Sean actually takes, like, the complete opposite approach of kind of these weird things we're talking about. Not only does he say, like, when we draft a guy, he's going to play that position that we drafted him for, he also says, I don't want you to change your weight, which is actually a little surprising because typically you think, at least from an outsider's perspective, and I think actually a lot of NFL teams approach it this way, is like, okay, you were in a college strength program, now you're playing the big boys. So we want everyone to gain some weight and to become bigger, or if you're a really big guy, we want you to lose a little bit of weight. Sean says, I want guys, not just their first year in the NFL, but their 6th year, their 10th year in the NFL, to play at their college weight, the weight they came out.
Yeah, because I think that, guys in the NFL aren't, in some ways, they're stronger, but I don't think strength has to mean necessarily more weight. So I think it's smart to keep guys at that weight where they're like, they're fastest, they're biggest, they're strongest, they're most agile. Because just getting guys and packing weight on them, it's going to make them slower, and they're going to have to adjust. They're going to have to change their game. I think it's smart to draft guys for what they play and how they play and what they are in that moment, and don't try to change guys.
That's one thing Sean has said over and over. Like, the draft a guy, play the rookie at his rookie weight, and, like, just let him go be him, which makes a whole lot of sense instead of, like, packing another 50 pounds on top of DeMarcus Walker, and then he gets to go take it all off and he has 7 sacks or somebody else.
Are there positions that it would benefit that Sean maybe should have a little bit of leeway with?
Like to gain weight?
Or lose, to change their weight from their rookie season.
Not if you're drafting a guy and like what he did on tape. Now, if a guy is like, if guys get sloppy in the offseason and they,
right,
get too big, you want to get back to where you are. But if you saw a guy on film, even if he's like an undersized guard and he plays at like 275, 280, but he's moving people and good enough for you to draft, like, keep him there and work on his strength, but don't try to like make him gain weight.
But also Quinn Miners, he has been like trying his hardest to keep weight off since he was in college because he was like, I don't want to put any more on, or he was told don't put any more on, and it was like a struggle for him not to go up, which is crazy because he's already like 310 pounds or whatever. But then this year, Sean must have told him it was okay, but he put on another 30 pounds, got up to 340, played the best season of his career. So like sometimes, if that's your natural weight, like that's just your natural weight. What a crazy natural weight to have, 340.
Yeah, and it's wild with those big guys, those offensive, defensive linemen, how like right when they retire, some of them stay at the same weight, but some of them balloon and some of them go the opposite. They just like shed weight like crazy, and some guys lose like 60 pounds that first year just by living life because that must be so uncomfortable to have to eat that much to maintain like 60 pounds while working out every day. And also it must be uncomfortable the opposite way. If you're just prone to gain tons of weight, especially you're already that big to work out all the time and then not eat enough to do that. It's wild. And that's another thing. I mean, we talked about how difficult it is to be a coach in the NFL last week. We talked about how difficult it is to be a player. That's something that is never talked about. I mean, like the working out, getting in at 5 a.m., working out throughout the off season, that's difficult. But then there's also just the eating, which is difficult too.
Yeah, and I found like myself, I don't feel like I really changed too much of my weight, but I realized I changed like needing to eat at certain times. Like I was a clock eater, I realized. Like it wouldn't even be like I was hungry. I just knew like you got to have, 3 meals a day and then also 2 snacks to kind of like stay in good playing weight. And so like literally I look at my phone, like, oh, it's 11:30, I need to eat, but nothing in my stomach was saying like you're hungry. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of changed like my diet and just like not time eating and just eat when I'm hungry more so.
Right.
Yeah.
And speaking of you, just since we're talking about eating right now, you and DT went vegan for 2 years?
Yeah.
2 full years while you were playing.
Yeah.
Was that difficult?
Probably shouldn't have did that.
Was that after you got the second deal?
It might have been.
Like
yeah,
right
it might have been. Yeah, right around there. Yeah, it wasn't difficult. I think it's tough like that first month because your body's like shedding all that sugar, all those carbs, and like you're craving it. But after that, like you feel really good, and it's like a clear mental space that you get in. You're vegan, so you know.
Not fully.
No, but it was tough to start, but not tough like once you get going.
So then why did you stop?
My coach told me I got to lighten my ass, and I was like, all right, I'll stop.
Other men telling you how to dictate your body. That's what sports are, though.
Pause, but yeah,
Well, maybe not really pause on that. Okay, let's jump into today's conversation. Last week was obviously a crazy busy week for us at the Super Bowl, trying to get as many different interviews that we could. So we couldn't really dive into the news that happened, but there were 2 significant losses for the Broncos. Broncos lost Christian Parker. He went to join Vic Fangio's staff to be the Eagles pass game coordinator on defense. And they also lost Marcus Dixon, who was the Broncos defensive line coach, who went over to join the Vikings as a defensive line coach. We'll get into why the Broncos allowed that move to happen, those moves to happen. But they also made an addition to their staff by signing Jim Leonhard, former Broncos defensive back, almost a teammate of yours. You guys missed each other just by a couple of years, Todd. They signed him to be their defensive back coach, and I know someone on this set believes it's a huge hire, and I want to get into that. Did the Broncos upgrade their staff? But first, would you guys like $200?
Absolutely.
Do you think everyone would want $200?
Heck yeah.
Probably.
Our friends over at Premium Members Credit Union are giving you $200 when you become a new member. That's all you have to do is become a new member over at Premium Members Credit Union, and they're going to give you $200 after you open a checking account and sign up for e-statements. It's that easy. So if you want to do that, go to becomepremier.com to find out more. And Premier Members Credit Union is not a bank, which means they do things differently, like putting their members first, and you get higher savings interest and lower loan rates, including you can earn 5% APY on your first $2,000 with their reverse tier money market. So whatever your goals are, Premier Members Credit Union is there for you. So go to becomepremier.com and open a checking account and sign up for their e-statements, and you'll get $200.
And check out Bet365 if you want even more free money, because if you place a $50 bet or more, this is just for everybody, by the way. Place a $50 bet or more on a pregame or live in-game same game parlay or parlay on any NBA game this Tuesday, which is today. You get $25 in bonus bets that you can use on any sporting event. If you place a bet between 20 and 50, then you get $10 in bonus bets. That's for everybody. Plus, if you are a new user, then you can bet and get it's a bet and get offer, and place a bet of $5 or more and get $150 in bonus bets. There's a first bet safety net offer that you can choose instead, where you get to bet up to $2,000, and if you lose that bet, you get that amount refunded in bonus bets. So you get to take your pick if you're a new user. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. This is very long, and
you need some help
there
here?
it is.
You need backup?
No, must be 21 or older and physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right, let's start with Jim Leonhard. Tell me about him, Henry.
Yeah, I mean, he's like a star in the coaching world. Like, it's pretty crazy that he doesn't have like a defensive coordinator job in the NFL. He got offered the Packers job a couple years ago, declined it. Last year, didn't get offered the Eagles defensive coordinator job. It was reported as they mutually agreed it didn't work, and he wound up going and getting a hip surgery, and it sounds like that may have kind of factored into everything that was happening there. Safety in the NFL, obviously, for quite a while, including with the Broncos. He played under Rex Ryan, and when Rex left to go to the Jets, he brought Jim Leonhard with him. And so that's like where a lot of like the defensive stuff comes from. It's a lot of that, a lot of like Dave Aranda stuff. He was the defensive coordinator at Wisconsin for 6 years, starting in 2017. He actually, his first year as a coach was 2016. He was like DB's coach, I think, at Wisconsin.
Yep.
And then immediately got promoted to defensive coordinator after Aranda left, I believe. So 2017, first in the country in total defense. 2018, 41st. 2019, 8th in total defense. 2020, 5th. 2021, 1st. 2022, 10th. You can't argue with that. Like, that's ridiculous production. And that's why he's been rumored as like a whatever for forever. I know all the Buffs guys have been wanting him to be the DC there.
There's a lot of smoke. I don't know if there's fire around it, but there's a lot of smoke that he was going to become the Buffs DC this year.
Yeah, and it's pretty crazy that he's taking a job as a defensive backs coach. I mean, he's, in my mind, like, has to be the best defensive backs coach in the country. I wouldn't be surprised, like, he might wind up like calling plays or something like that, depending on how the season goes. Yeah, a lot of what he does, it's like super multiple defenses, like all sorts of different things, like kind of play out like a base 3-4 probably, but it's just like super aggressive fronts, but also do crazy stuff. What he's known for is like the twists and the stunts, and he'll like drop defensive ends into coverage, and against like college quarterbacks, they're just too stupid to handle all that. Like, that's just the case. And in the NFL right now, there's like a record number of stupid quarterbacks. So all that little like drop the defensive end, shift the coverage over, like, imagine Justin Fields trying to decipher that, just as like one example. I mean, imagine Mac Jones, imagine any of those guys. Like, I love it. I think everybody loves it. I think the fact that he is willing to take a defensive back's job is pretty crazy.
I don't think it's that crazy. I mean, the guy was a senior football analyst
Yeah.
for Illinois last year. So, I mean, I love how
But that's just a recovery.
you are on him. But a little bit of a step back. I don't think he's going to be calling plays for the Broncos.
Not right off the
Heck
bat.
no.
Not
right off the bat.
Never.
Okay.
If things
If
go...
VJ's
We're
there,
Team Vance. Yep.
yeah, there would be no reason for him to. And his first year here, like, unless there's a new DC, that's the only way. And he is the DC.
He would be it.
That's the only way he will be able to.
To me,
call
he's
plays.
just like the fallback plan. Like, if the defense starts how it did last year, you've got him right there.
And see, to me, I don't think this is an upgrade from Christian Parker. However, I think this is the best option they could have had to replace Christian Parker. Once they let him go, this was the best move they could have made. So I love the hire, but I am that high on Christian Parker as well. Christian Parker is a guy who had 2 interviews to become a defensive coordinator this year. He had an interview last year as well. He's 32 years old. I believe he's going to be a defensive coordinator next year, potentially. So Christian Parker has been in the NFL too. He's pretty much done everything you wanted him to do as the Broncos defensive backs coach. So I do think it was a mistake to let him go. Now, we'll get into some reasons why they let him go a little later, but Christian Parker, to me, was as good as it comes. I mean, he helped elevate Justin Simmons. He developed Pat Surtain. Now, obviously, Pat was a great talent, but he couldn't have done a better job with Pat Surtain. When you needed guys on the other side to step up, Fabian Moreau did as good as you could have imagined. And then you had Christian Parker turn Jaquan McMillan from an undrafted guy into a star. I mean, he was legitimately in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation for the Broncos defense last year. That's all under the wings of Christian Parker. So I don't know how you could look at Christian Parker and say, like, man, I just wish he would have done a little bit more. He did everything that you could have wanted. Saying that, Jim Leonhard is about as good as a replacement as you can get, in my opinion.
I agree. I think that it's tough to really understand how much was Christian Parker and how much was the players, because I do feel like he's very, very well respected. I know he does a great job, but you can't make somebody into something they're not. Like, you know what I'm saying? I think you can only coach up guys so much. Like, Sean had Jameis Winston, but it didn't make him a Pro Bowler, like, you know what I'm saying, MVP candidate. I think that Christian Parker's a great coach. I feel like this guy will be good too. I think the room is good. So no matter what, I think he has a good room that he's stepping into. And as a coach, that's what you want. Like, it's easy when you are outside linebackers coach and have D. Ware and Vaughn and Shane Ray and Shaq Barrett. Like, you're going to look good. You know what I'm saying? So good luck to him. And I know he has a great room to work with. So hopefully it all works out.
And I think a big What's the face for?
Jim Leonhard, it's just different tiers. Okay. Like, as much as, like, we love Christian and, like, he's exciting young guy, all that, like, again, we're talking about the guy who's, like, every defensive coordinator is like, oh, look at this guy. This guy's a stud. Like, the buzz around his name over the past 5 years is just insane. Like, every single year, is Jim Leonhard finally going to be a head coach? Is he finally going to be a head coach? Takes the interim head coach job. Like, he's a younger coach than Christian Parker is and has a much better resume.
Not. He's not a younger coach.
7 years of experience versus, I mean, I think Christian started in 2013
not age, but just
as like coaching, like time as a coach. Like, the fact that he has risen the way that he has is just like unbelievable. And I get, like, Christian Parker winds up on all the lists, like who could be the next head coach, but the Jim Leonhard buzz, just like, it's blown that out of the water for 5 years. And again, like, that's partially because I come from college football, and so I was hearing that for a couple years, like, oh my God, how the hell is he doing all this stuff? Like, that's just like, it's just, you got a superstar defensive backs coach. We should get the Buffs guys on to talk about it.
Yeah, no, and I'm not trying to take away from Jim Leonhard. He's been an outstanding coordinator and defensive backs coach at Wisconsin, but he hasn't proven it in the NFL, and that's nothing to take away from him. But so I'm not trying to take away. He's really, really good. I'm just not sold that this is a massive upgrade by any means. But you know, I think this is significant. Todd, I said he was one of your former teammates, almost one of your former teammates. Henry mentioned that he played for the Broncos in 2012, so you almost crossed paths with him in Denver. But unsurprisingly, you almost crossed paths with him in New Orleans when Sean Payton was there. He then went from Denver and then was on the practice squad of the Saints in 2013, so you really missed him by just a couple of months there. A New Orleans Saints connection? Sean Payton? No.
You must have seen something on the practice squad.
Yeah,
I think he has to prove it. I think he was good in college, but you know, you don't want him to come up and Urban Meyer the situation. Or
could you imagine if Jim Leonhard, Urban Meyer? That would be something else.
No, I think he'll do good, man. I think he'll do good, but I think it's tough to tell whether he's going to be better than Christian Parker. I think Christian Parker has a lot of buzz around his name too.
Yeah.
Sucks that they let him go, but I think they were like, "Oh, you want to go be with Vic? Please go."
yeah, exactly.
Enjoy.
Wait, you want to be with Vic?
Go. So yeah, I think it'll be good.
I just love that he's coming from college too. Like, again, like, that's the NFL is moving more and more that way, and so to get somebody who's been playing against the RPOs and the quick reads, again, like, because quarterbacks are dumb right now. They just are. And it's because they're coming from those systems, and so coaches try to put them in those systems in the NFL. To have somebody in the room who's just been scheming against, you know, all sorts of college football teams, like that, just to have that voice is so huge.
But when you say against all these quarterbacks, I just think, like, close to the Broncos. Patrick Mahomes, not one of those quarterbacks. Yeah. Justin Herbert, not one of those quarterbacks.
They'll run some RPOs and stuff.
You're seeing the scheme that he's been seeing has been beneficial for him to be able to coach up these guys.
Exactly.
So you think that does help going against Justin Herbert?
Yeah, I think it's just good to have that voice in the room, to have somebody who's been scheming against RPOs and read options, and because they change so much every year. I mean, Minnesota's the one that's innovating all that stuff, and he's playing them. I think they play every year. I think they're the same division. Yeah, they're definitely the same division. So you just have that in the back of your mind, so that when you hit, you know, Mahomes, you have like those couple of little plays that they always run, and you just have those answers when you need them, or when you run into the Hurts, or you run into the Bear, whoever it may be. Like, it's just a nice voice to have, I think.
I mean, I like that too, but you don't think Vance Joseph knows how to go against these? I mean, you're talking about college systems, like they're like innovating the wheels and that the NFL has no idea how to
They
handle them.
are.
No, NFL coaches are better than college coaches for the most part. Like, yes, you
But,
do
yeah.
have some coaches in college that are better than in the NFL, but they get paid a lot more in the NFL. It's more of a lifestyle.
No, they don't. I don't know about that.
Yes, they do.
The top college coaches, like you've got.
I'm not saying
you've got
top
more
college.
college.
I'm saying
Just
just like in
overall,
general.
yeah.
We're talking,
general,
we're
yeah.
talking about he was a defensive coordinator and defensive backs coach in college.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to hate. Jim Leonhard, I think, is, again, as good of a replacement as you can get. You're talking about him like he's Nick Saban.
Yeah.
He's not Nick Saban. No,
I think he's not Nick Saban, but he is that sort of guy on defense. Like again,
me
like
a
he has been
break.
the star. He's been the guy who everybody who's hired a defensive coordinator is like he's in that circle every single year.
But then
Like,
why hasn't he been there? Like,
Well, last year
he's-
because he
as you
decided
said,
not
he's-
to because
he's
he got
been a
hip
coach
surgery.
Since, he's been a coach since, what, 2016? And yeah, he was a defensive coordinator for Wisconsin. But that's not the top college football program. If another college program wanted him, they could have plucked him.
He's from Wisconsin,
for more. Okay,
That's why he
Okay,
stayed.
he's Nick Saban.
I'm just saying, look, they just got a great coach.
I
Like
think
this
he
is a
has.
guy.
I think he has good
There's a
insight.
difference.
Yeah, good insight. But I mean, things change when you get to the league, and it's not like he can walk in the room like, when we did this at Wisconsin, it worked. Everybody, what are you talking about? Like, I think he has good knowledge, but I think at the same time, I think he's unproven in the league, and I think a lot of stuff works in college. We'll just have to see.
We'll have to see.
I can't say that he's Nick Saban yet. I mean, Pete Carroll failed out of the NFL, had to go back, and then his second return was good. Like, not every even successful college coach comes to the NFL just does good right away.
I will say that
So we'll see.
The Badgers have had more winning seasons than the Broncos the last 9 years.
They
But if the Badgers played the Broncos, I think we all know how that's
It's
going.
also grown men versus kids. I'm kind of with Henry
They're
on this
18.
one.
They're grown.
Grown-ish.
So
So you're taking the Badgers? Is that what you said you hear?
I'm taking Hank's side on like I'm all in for Jim Leonhard. I think he's actually
oh
gonna
my
be the guy.
gosh.
he's going to be a defensive coordinator in the NFL for a long time.
And we got to see how he meshes with what Vance does. Like, he doesn't have say-so. So he's going to have to run the defense and the DBs, and Vance was a DB's coach. So good luck trying to out-voice him. Like,
Totally.
we're going to have to see how that dynamic works.
But that I thought was interesting with Christian Parker too, because he leaves somewhere where Vance is more open-minded with that stuff. Like it is more of like a collective, like what do you think? What are our ideas? Versus Vic, it's very much
His way or the highway.
it is Vic's way or the highway. And so I was a little surprised. Like I get why you would go to the Eagles because they're a team that's much more likely to be successful. And every year you put this Broncos defense on your resume, it's just not a good look. Like he took another step back last year, I think, just because of the way that defense performed. And so when you get away from that,
You
I
think
get
Christian
it.
Parker took a step back?
Yeah.
How?
I don't think so.
What did
I
he
think-
do?
I think Justin Simmons did the same thing he did. I think Pat Surtain did the same thing he did. I think Damari Mathis took a step back. I think Fabian Moreau was good for 4 or 5 weeks, but then was terrible down the stretch. And I think Jaquan played well. So I think that you look around and like there just isn't much there. And then you throw in what the defense did as a whole. The defense took a step back. And that doesn't like, again, it's not him who's in total control of all that, but it is like that is on his resume. Like that's not, you'd much rather see he was a part of the Chiefs defense, for example, where people are like, oh, they kind of overachieved. Like that was an underachieving defense. And so like that to me is at least the tiebreaker where you say some guys played well, some guys didn't. There were some issues in that secondary for sure at various points. They played well during the winning streak, but overall, like it's just not the defense you want to be a part of.
Man,
On your
On your
resume.
resume.
I disagree because he wasn't the defensive coordinator. He was a defensive backs coach, and I do think the defensive back group was great. I mean, was borderline elite.
I do not.
Jaquan McMillan, what didn't we when we talked about like biggest Pro Bowl snub? Him and Quinn Miners could have been right there for being that, and that was an undrafted guy his second year in the NFL. I think he gets a lot of credit for that. But you know
What
where
happened
I
when
think,
Delarian Turner Yell subbed in though?
are you gonna bash a 5th round pick for
I
not
mean,
working
it
out?
just is what it
like
is,
a 5th
though.
round
It's
pick
like-
that. Yeah.
As much as like Jaquan played well, he's the only guy I look at and say like he played better than I expected last year. Even Pat Surtain took a step back, you know?
Yeah, I don't.
He
I
said
mean,
so.
when you are when you're the second best cornerback in the NFL and you become the fourth best cornerback in the NFL, I don't look at Christian Parker and like point the finger
totally.
in a big way.
But again, when you just go through the pluses and minuses, I think in that secondary there were more guys who disappointed me than made me excited. And Jaquan's obviously a big plus, but
I think he left like strictly for his coaching resume.
think so too.
Like you want to say you coach with Vance Joseph, you want to say you coach with Vic Fangio, like you want to build that resume. I mean, like my coach in the NFL used to talk about all the time. I started under Bob Switzer and blah blah blah. Like nobody we care about, but that's so important in the coaching world. Like who you're coaching with, coaching under. So I think he just maybe one more notch on his resume.
Yep. Meet more people. More people who might hire you. Offensive guys might hire you when they're a head coach.
You never know. But I don't feel like he didn't do a good job with the players. I think he did.
I don't think he didn't do a good job.
You know where Jim Leonhard would be Nick Saban? Is if he went down to the American Raptors and was the equivalent of a safety with the Raptors after spending the entire NFL career in the NFL, going down and playing with the American Raptors rugby team. And you know what? Todd, you can do that. Jim Leonhard could do that. Former basketball players, former hockey players, former athletes can go and join the American Raptors. That's what the rugby team here in Colorado is doing, and they're kicking off their season in just a month down at our friends over at Infinity Park. Actually, the season kicks off this coming weekend where they're playing in Argentina. You can watch their games on ESPN Plus in the 2024 Super Rugby Americas campaign. So tune in, but then they're going to be here in Denver for a home stretch over at Infinity Park on Sunday, March 17th. Tickets are only $10. Bring your friends. It's a great way to see some sports in the spring. And it's an awesome venue over at Infinity Park, just about 10 minutes away from the DNVR Bar. It's a really good time, so make sure to check them out. And you can also follow them along with DNVR over DNVR Rugby Podcast. Colton Strickler, our guy, has you covered. So make sure to give him a follow on Twitter or X at Colton Strickler or at DNVR_rugbies. Check them out.
And shout out to Breckenridge Brewery. You know, they're our favorite brewery. They've been holding us down for a long time, so we definitely love them. Got to show them a lot of love. You can go to breckbrew.com for your beer locator. Breck Brew has a beer for any occasion, and there's no better way to watch a game than having some Breck Brew. There's no more football on, sadly, but you got basketball, baseball's coming up, Avalanche. The Rapids are coming back. Isn't that right? You're here?
Here we go for last place, baby. Woo!
Wow.
So you're going to need a lot of Breck Brew to watch to get through that season.
I actually, last year, that's how I got through the season.
See?
I got drunk right before the game. I'm like, this is the only way I can watch this team right now.
So Breck Brew is definitely here for you. And all you're watching, go check them out. You can go to breckbrew.com to find a brew near you.
All right. So there's also one other move that happened. Defensive line coach Marcus Dixon left, and it was for the same position with the Vikings. So two guys pretty much took lateral moves. What does that tell you?
Well, those are the only two guys that Sean Payton carried over from the last staff, right?
Yep.
So I think those are the easy dots to connect, is that everybody else was handpicked by Sean Payton. Those are the two who are left over. And both of those guys are really good young coaches, very good young coaches. I also think that that's probably why George Payton probably said, like, hey, you know, we really like these guys. Like, I wouldn't mind if we kept them around. Those two were the ones who were sitting in on the head coaching interviews last year, remember? Because just to, like, get an idea of, like, how that goes as a way to, like, get them ready for when their time comes. So those are the dots I connect, is that the two guys who Sean Payton didn't pick out are the two guys who are now leaving.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can look at production, because I think Christian Parker's group was one of the most productive groups on the team. So, like, I think you can look at receiver. I think you can look at many other positions and say, like, those guys underperformed what they should have been. So, Hank, I completely agree with you. That's exactly the dots there were two coaches that were held over and two coaches that weren't Sean Payton hires. And I do give credit for Sean Payton for keeping him on his staff for a year, because those are two guys that probably deserve to be held over from that last staff, which was a nightmare before. And so I give Sean Payton credit, but clearly there's a Sean Payton way of doing things. And clearly he has a vision for exactly what a coach looks like, exactly how a coach fits in his system. And I think there was clearly a mutual understanding from both guys, because clearly these guys are good enough to be coaches in the NFL, because Christian Parker got a slight bit of an upgrade, defensive backs coach plus passing game coordinator be with the Eagles. But the Broncos, that wasn't a big enough upgrade. They could have kept him if they wanted to. And then Marcus Dixon, just a defensive line coach, the same exact title in Minnesota. Maybe it also could be those guys saying, Sean Payton does things a different way, and we'd like to be somewhere else too.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it may be that. Because it's just different coaching under different coaches. I mean, they might have liked Sean, but didn't necessarily like how he ran things and wanted to make some changes he wouldn't let them make. So I'm curious to know, like, if it was them wanting to leave or if Sean was like, hey, we would probably move on from you. You should probably go scout some stuff out.
Right.
So it's very interesting because my particular coach, linebacker coach, was here through four different head coaches.
Really
he was
impressive.
on all the staff. So I think it depends. I think when it's not broke, don't fix it. If you have somebody that has a good relationship with their players and their players are playing well, you kind of try and keep that guy around. But maybe they wanted to leave.
Yeah, and it is a good point that this could have been a nice way to fire these guys. Now, I really, from what I understand, I don't think that was the case with Christian Parker.
Yeah.
I do think that was a lot more of Christian's choice to leave as well. I'm not sure about Marcus Dixon, but if this is a nice way of firing someone, then Sean and the Broncos did it the right way.
Yeah.
Because these guys didn't have to take a demotion because they were fired and go somewhere else for that. So they did it the right way. Now, at the same time, could you imagine what it would be like coaching under Nathaniel Hackett? Understanding from what we saw of Nathaniel Hackett, the bear hug, fun-loving guy. Now, he did work a ton, but like going from that environment to then a Sean Payton, where he is very different, and that's not a bad thing to be coached hard, and whether you're a coach being coached hard or a player being coached, it's not a bad thing. But going from like as easygoing of a culture to then that could be pretty that could be pretty bone shaking, and you might want to get out and try something else.
Yeah, and I feel like once you've coached for a long time, I feel like Nathaniel Hackett was kind of like letting his coaches coach. Like you handle the DBs, and when you get to the game on Sunday, just make sure they play well, and we'll talk about it in the meeting afterwards. I feel like guys are putting together game plans with Sean, and he's like looking over their shoulder like, sure you want to do that? Right. All right, it's not on me if you mess up. Like I think it's just very much like more hand-on, more detailed. The teacher's checking your work, marking it off with a red pen versus like, you go out and do your job.
Right.
I trust you.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. And again, like it is really, it's just not a good year for any defensive coach to have that on the resume. It just isn't. Like you look at the defensive line, it's like, yeah, Zach Allen, DJ Jones, like they were who we thought they were, but then they really did struggle to find like a rotational piece there. And some of that's Ini Uwazurike winds up being suspended, and he was supposed to be a guy who takes a step, and like Matt Henningsen played well, I guess, but like there wasn't a lot of girth there either.
Whoa.
Oh, sorry. There wasn't a lot of the big bodies just weren't quite holding up the way that they have in the past.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, coaches, I think every great coach within the NFL had great players and Hall of Fame players.
Totally.
I don't know that he had a lot of whatever word you use to really, really make him seem like he was doing a great job coaching.
Would you put money on the next defensive line coach at some point having coached for the Saints?
Definitely.
Yeah, 100%.
Or played,
yeah.
Right. Yeah, could be a player too.
Yep. Other thing is, the Broncos could have blocked either of these guys from leaving if they wanted.
Yeah.
So while it doesn't necessarily mean like they were forced out, like when you take that lateral move, Sean can just say, "Nope, you're not allowed to go. You're still on our staff."
But who wants to be around that?
Right.
Nobody.
Like,
Nobody.
I think you should let guys go if they want to go. You know what I'm saying?
Could you
Probably for the best.
imagine, like, for an entire year at minimum, too, being like, I'm not letting you leave.
Yeah.
Someone comes in, that has to be so uncomfortable to ask, like, hey, I want to leave. And they're like, no, you're going to stay. You're under control here. That'd be so weird. Especially, it's not Vance. It's not your coordinator trying to leave to be another coordinator. And if that was the case, if Vance or any coordinator was asking to leave for the lateral move, it probably fired anyways, regardless. This isn't neither of these are as important of positions where it's probably best just to have those guys gone if they don't want to be there.
Yeah, so it's just bad energy. Like, Hank, imagine if you walked into your girl like, I want to leave, and she's like, nah, you're not going nowhere.
Actually,
that happened?
Well, no. Well, it was actually kind of So we have this balcony at the apartment. And so she was like, I need some fresh air. Just walked out there and I locked the door behind her.
Oh, dang.
So it's like a little bit different because I like trapped her out there, but she was so pissed. You wouldn't believe, it was only like 45 seconds where I just like, I took a little picture, like, you know. But she was, I have never seen her so mad. It's good to know that.
Well, I wonder why.
It's a little different than like keeping somebody hostage in like a
No, it sounds like
relationship.
she was a hostage.
No, I mean in some ways, it's only second floor. Like if she really wanted out. There's like 45 seconds.
A lot of people agreed with you on the Jim Leonhard, Christian
Yeah, I think
Parker
I
stuff.
lost it
They
now.
might be thinking like, no, I need to not agree
Never
with
mind.
Henry.
Yeah,
anymore.
I'm
never
starting to
mind.
think I'm on the wrong side of this argument.
She was so mad. She was so mad.
That's hilarious.
When we travel with Henry next time, we got to make sure we're not like
Don't
going
go
into certain
outside.
places
Yeah,
that can be
no.
locked from the outside.
It's just like a
Henry.
classic joke. Like
Yeah,
when you have a
like,
sliding glass door,
It was
like what
also
else is that meant
cold
for?
last night.
She said it's like, oh, it's kind of warm here. I'm just gonna go out there. So like well then she comes in, she's like, I'm so cold, and I was like, bro, it was 45 seconds. Like you were probably gonna stand out there that long anyway.
There's gonna be a time where you don't show up for work the next day because like she locks you out for 12 hours and
Yeah.
you're still on the balcony.
The second floor if you really want to get down. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I actually thought about that.
Thankfully, all the balconies in Vegas are like they have no balconies. All the windows
That's
are locked,
true.
or we would have been screwed all week.
That is a good
Could you
point.
imagine?
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know if that's why they don't have balconies in Vegas because they're afraid of Hank or if it's for other reasons.
Yeah, I feel like
Well, Hank is just an added like
It's other-
precaution.
yeah. It's the same reason why like I pulled out the blow dryer and it was kind of
what
like
is going
it got like steamy in the there because like the shower so it wouldn't turn on. And I realized like those have to be like the most sensitive sensors on the Vegas blow dryers in terms of like water,
Yeah.
which is dark, but
That's really dark.
pretty
Oh
dark.
my gosh.
well, I mean we're
We
talking
just
about the
went down
balcony too.
Darkest rabbit hole with Hank.
I don't know. Did you know that if everything if all like hotel rooms are equal, on average, it would be 13% of them would have a death inside them at some point. Current hotel
any
rooms,
room.
any room. Now again, like it's probably skewed more toward like some sketchier ones than
Motels.
like than the like Four
Circus
Seasons or whatever.
for sure has had
Exactly. That's crazy. Like 13% of hotels probably have had like somebody die on average.
Was
I'm
that in
not saying
Vegas or
it
was that
knows.
anywhere?
At all U.S. United States.
Where'd you find that stat?
So yeah, our balcony is like right across from a hotel, and so like somebody came out on a stretcher, like there was an ambulance, and so
geez.
like again, my girlfriend's like, "What if somebody died? What if somebody died?" And thank goodness the guy came out and was like smiling and laughing on his stretcher. But that's when I googled like, what are the well, because I told her like, there's a good chance like somebody has died in there, and so I figured it out. It's 13% of rooms.
You
That
probably
is-
got locked outside in the cold.
Hypothermia.
He's put on the stretcher, so he got warm, and he's
Yeah.
like, "Okay, I'm good now." Oh my goodness, you know some crazy stats. Okay, shall we? Man, I don't know if this will be
Wow,
as
that
dark
really
of a
killed the chat.
conversation or not. Should we dive into our Bet365 top 5
boy.
biggest obstacles for the Broncos to overcome? Speaking of dark, now this can be. Let's get creative. This can be like Patrick Mahomes is
That's number
obviously
one.
an obstacle.
That's number one.
It could be internal. It could be the Broncos. If you think
Russell
Sean
Wilson's
Payton's
contract.
a big obstacle, it could be him.
Yep.
So let's throw some out here and then build the top 5. So Patrick Mahomes,
Yep.
definitely on the list.
Russell Wilson's contract. Those are the clear top 2 to me.
Russell Wilson's contract. Could the quarterback situation be a different than Russell
I know.
Wilson's
You
contract?
I
could
feel like
several.
that's I think
Yeah.
it's some of Russell Wilson's contract in the quarterback
Okay.
situation.
In the quarterback
Okay.
situation. Well, we're throwing things out and then we're gonna build
You
it.
could go salary cap in general because they are $20 million over. It changed $25 million or so now.
Is that with Russ on?
It
the
won't
team
change
right now?
depending on whether Russ is cut.
I guess the only reason it would change
Yeah.
is if they take the entire dead cap
Yeah.
this year instead. Okay. Boy, like
What about the win now mentality?
Ooh.
I feel like that's a big reason
Yeah.
why they won't
Like
be
never
successful.
rebuilt.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a really tricky one.
That's-
and you could
that's-
look
yeah.
at past and present. I like that a lot.
General, just like lack of Pro Bowlers, lack of Pro Bowl talent, lack of all Pro
just
talent.
lack of talent,
Could just say lack of talent.
just roster
It's a little
talent.
harsh, but yeah.
Roster talent
Yeah.
that could be
That is
one.
What about Christian Parker leaving?
Hank thinks absolutely not.
No, because that's a plus now, I guess. Right?
They just got the younger Nick Saban. So, yeah.
I mean, they're calling it the Aranda Leonard defense, like the Saban Belichick defense, just for what it's worth.
What about Jim Harbaugh now in the division?
Yep.
That could potentially be one. Oh, man. The news of Andy Reid officially returning. Is that...
Oh.
How big of a deal is that for the Broncos?
I mean, if he retired, it would be a big deal. I think him returning is just small news because
Yeah.
I
Fair.
think that's what he was supposed to do. But if he retired, it would have been a big deal for the Broncos.
Especially because, like, I don't think the Broncos are championship contenders next year with or without Andy Reid, and then next year he'll decide again. Like, if he was like, yeah, I've got 10 more years in me, that would be a big problem.
But because it's a year-by-year
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, that's totally fair.
Is he signing one-year deals like LeBron? Like, just breaking in the cash?
What about, like, the lack of draft capital that the Broncos have had?
Yeah.
But see,
well,
I
is
feel like
this
that
going
plays into the
forward or
talent.
past? Are we going forward or past?
Well,
Or in
I think
general?
from right now, because the thing is, like,
I think the lack of draft capital, though, is certainly still catching up with them because now they could have, what is it, 3 first-round picks on the roster that they don't have. 2 for the Russell Wilson trade, 1 for the Sean Payton trade.
I think that goes into lack of talent.
Yeah, I was
though.
about to say that goes
Okay,
into that.
okay,
Yeah.
that's fair.
Well, we could just say bad draft decisions.
Yeah.
Draft pick decisions. 'Cause
Yeah.
you got those
That's up
3
there,
they traded
too.
away.
'Cause then you
traded
get to
away
include the
Bradley
trades.
Chubb. You traded away all your first round draft picks as of late. Besides,
So
you know,
bad trades.
bad trades.
Bad trades might be the
yeah.
big. Like that might be
a
the
big
one.
I mean, Russell Wilson might just, instead of his contract, it's just Russell Wilson.
Was Sean Payton a bad trade?
No. I think 1 first round draft pick for a head coach of the future is not a bad
Yeah.
trade.
What about
But when you
add a second on it?
What'd they get back? A third?
They got, yes, I think.
First and second for a
because
third?
then they traded that third to move up to get
Yes.
Riley Moss this past year.
I feel like
Bad
it feels
trades.
bad because we don't have much anyway. But we had like just our normal picks, it wouldn't feel like a terrible trade.
Exactly.
It could-
Especially, I mean, they won 3 more games with him than without him. Like, what more could you expect?
Yeah, and it could end up being a bad trade if we look back and he has 1 winning season
Yeah.
in his time here. But right now, I'm not out on Sean Payton.
Oh, definitely. Not.
Real
So no,
quick.
I don't think it was a bad trade.
Yeah, especially because it was the 29th overall pick. Because it was the
Right.
Dolphins one. It wasn't even their like top 10 pick anyway. So
Right.
So, I'm thinking it's Mahomes number 1, it's a quarterback situation number 2, and then we try to get the rest into the last 3. Like, figure out what category they fall into.
I totally agree. When I was breaking this down last night, I thought there was a clear top 2.
Yep.
And I could be convinced to go either way with Mahomes, but I guess with Mahomes' longevity here, but we know he's here for the next 10 years or so. So Mahomes number 1, and then Russell Wilson contract? Is that how we want to phrase it? Russell Wilson's contract, since that, I mean, that's a barrier
I do thi-
regardless. It's a barrier if
Exactly.
they move on from him. It's a barrier if they keep him. So let's go with specifically Russell Wilson's
Say
contract.
we broke.
Okay.
Just say we're broke.
We're broke. Yeah. And then after
Is
that,
it weird to say we're broke because you're right when you have the richest owners in the NFL?
It's tough.
Is that
isn't
like
that crazy?
Is that like just a human being? Like all of your money is tied up in like a future CD that you cannot pull out in any way, but you got tons of money in that CD, but you have like $3 in your bank account.
That's like when your parents used to say like, I'm rich, but you guys are broke. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Yes.
It's like, do you have McDonald's money? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's what it feels like.
You know you're fine for the long haul,
But
but
you
like right
know.
now, no.
Yeah.
When's the last
No.
time these owners have felt this?
That's
Like,
a
it's
big-
like, yeah,
never.
we just can't afford to do anything. Like, we're just financially stuck. That's
never
tough.
in there. I mean, I don't know Greg Penner's background, but like
We could guess.
he was very successful once
Yeah.
he graduated college. But I don't know what his upbringing was like. But Kerry Walton Penner was born into the Walton family, so never
Yeah.
felt broke.
I would say, I think number 3 is a quarterback thing. Number 3, like, you don't have a starting quarterback. You don't have clarity at quarterback.
We broke. We're going. We broke it too.
I like it.
So
That is the-
that's worse than the quarterback situation because I think
think
the quarterback
so.
situation is worse.
I think that the being broke is worse.
'Kay.
Because you
Yeah.
you don't have money for a quarterback. You don't have money for players. You got to get rid of some guys just to, yeah.
Okay, so then
Greg
Cor-
Penner's
this is
history-
really sad.
Greg Penner's childhood's a little weird too, where he comes
Let's-
for money. So
weird.
A little
We'll recap
weird
after the
about
show.
if he comes from money.
the way he comes from money, the way his parents made money was a little weird.
Okay.
They're like mobsters or what?
It's
That's
like
what
the
I'm-
complete opposite, but an angle you wouldn't expect. So
The
I'm
opposite.
very
This is a weird
interested.
guessing game.
I'm
It's
very interested in
opposite
it.
of mobsters.
You guys
Wait,
are
so
not gonna
did he
get
come
it.
from money?
It's like medical sales.
So his parents, his parents are sex
Superheroes?
therapists. His parents are sex therapists.
Oh,
Okay.
who
that's
got
the
rich.
opposite of a mobster?
Well, the reason this is what's opposite. They wrote a sex advice
the
book.
Kama Sutra.
Oh, no,
That's the one
from a
that-
Christian
yeah.
perspective, and that's how they got rich.
Huh.
That's
So-
where it's opposite from the mobsters, the Christian side of it.
So that's
That
what we
is-
learned, though. The opposite of a mobster is a Christian sex book writer. there we go. We learn something new
That
every
is
day.
wild.
Wow,
All right.
you would never know that. Like looking
No,
at
No,
it.
you wouldn't.
absolutely not.
You wouldn't.
He knows the tricks though.
It's insane. Like,
Would you read the book? Because so Sam Walton wrote like the famous whatever book, like How to Be Successful in Business or whatever. I'm
Yep.
sure all the Waltons read that. Do the Penners read the?
How to slay.
I bet that's what it's
The
called.
first Christmas that they had together, they exchanged books.
Uh-huh.
And,
Yeah.
very different
Damn.
books.
RG
That is
just got here.
wild.
He's been missing
Yeah.
out.
RG
That's
wanted
hilarious.
more information on this book.
He did.
Okay, so we're going quarterback situation in 3.
Yep.
Then actually, I think this is where the divide is. I think these 3 are the biggest ones.
Yeah.
And then I think these last 2 aren't going to be as big right now. Where do we go? Do we go with Jim Harbaugh in the division? Do we go lack of talent? Is that different than we broke? Probably
Harbaugh's
is,
not
right?
problem.
Yeah, I
think.
think it is.
I mean,
I'd
lack
say
of,
lack of
talent
talent,
probably
yeah.
is here. Yep.
Yep.
Man, maybe this actually, unfortunately, isn't like a top 2 or a top 3. Might be a top 4 right now.
We might be able to just keep going. There might be 20 things that are serious problems.
Is it a true top 5? Tell me there's not a problem that's as big as
What
the rest
is-
of these.
No,
I mean, you could.
I don't know. We can keep going.
I don't think the stadium's a problem.
No.
Uniforms aren't like a not like a pressing problem.
Not an
so none of that
obstacle.
sort of stuff really stands out.
They're building a brand new facility, so if there were any concerns, and the Broncos facility,
Yep.
Todd, you would know better than I, but maybe not state of the art, but it's not like a hindrance for free
No, it's
agents
really
or
nice.
anything.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Now, was Minnesota's nicer? Because that
Yeah.
one seemed like absolute.
because it's brand new.
Yeah,
Right.
That's
Because
nice.
again, it's like the colleges who just have to go insane back in the day because they can't actually pay players, but they
Yeah.
have all this money. So it's like, what are we gonna do? We're gonna put Xboxes in every kid's locker, and it's like that's how you get them. Like we're gonna have like a freaking lazy river, like water slides. Like why not? And so like when you do that in college, everybody just expects like nice things in the NFL.
Yep.
Someone said, "How is another team the Broncos' biggest obstacle?"
Because there's no path to win a Super Bowl in the next 10 years. Like your path is the wild card. 7 teams have won Super Bowls as a wild card ever. 4 wild card teams have made the Super Bowl but lost. Like it's just so rare. Like there's been one in the last 15 years, I think, a wild card team that won the Super Bowl.
The Giants.
That's wild.
I think the Giants were before that. That was the
Okay.
one that was like 16 years ago. Whatever. The number's something like that. But yeah, there's been one since the Giants. So
Do you know who it is?
I'm trying to remember. It's very recent.
That's actually
Like,
crazy.
the Bucks weren't a wild card, were they? They might have been.
What year?
I don't think
Your
Tom won
I
it?
don't
No,
think
they won that division.
No,
Um,
I think they
the-
were. No, they won their division when they
Did
were. a
the
bad
was it the
team.
Rams? Did the Niners win the division that year? Was it the Chiefs won their division all years with
It could have
Mahomes?
been that.
It's like one of these in the last couple years.
Well, and just to piggyback off what you're saying, Henry, how another team could be.
it was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in
It was.
2020.
Wow.
It was?
Saints.
They were a wild card?
Yep, and then the last time before that was 2010, Green Bay Packers, then New
Yeah.
York Giants, then Steelers in 05, which
Dang,
we all
so-
remember very
So
clearly.
that decade it happened many times, but in the past
Yeah.
15 years only once. That's wild. But to piggyback what you're saying, Henry, why another team could be the biggest obstacle? It's not just the Broncos. Mahomes and what's happening in Kansas City should scare the hell out of. I said the Detroit Lions. It should scare the hell out of NFC teams, the entire NFL, because that is the biggest obstacle for every team right now. And then you couple it with them being an AFC team, and then it's an AFC West team. It's really bad news for the Chargers,
Yeah.
Broncos, and Raiders. It's those 3 teams' number 1 obstacle.
Yeah. I feel like we can beat them though, man. I really do.
Yeah.
Like it's always close games. It's like 1 or 2 plays a game. I mean, hats off to them because they're winning Super Bowls, but man, I think we're so close. I don't feel like we're getting like dog stomped like we maybe used to. Like
Exactly, and that's where I'm at too.
close.
Where it's like I'm not going to pick the Broncos to beat the Chiefs because that just feels like a crazy thing to do. But like splitting those games is very much on the table. The problem is when the Chiefs go and win 11 of their others, and the Broncos need to match that by winning 11 of the others on their own. Again, like I've said this way too many times. This is the last time I'm going to say it, but just for the chat, Tom Brady lost his division once. Like that's what we're going to see with Mahomes. Like it's just that tough to beat him. It's not like just in the chat. It's like we only play them twice. Yes, only play them twice. The problem is winning that division with them in it when they're just winning 12 games a year. Because you got to get 12 games and then win the tiebreaker. Like, that's your expectation if you want to win the division. That's really hard for any team to do.
Who's more important for the Chiefs? Is it Andy Reid or is it Travis Kelce?
I lean Kelce, I think. But it's tough.
I'd probably say Andy Reid.
Yeah.
Man, I'm shocked from a player's perspective that you'd say a coach.
I wouldn't put him over Patrick Mahomes, but just the play calling. It's just a different type of energy with him as a coach and how he like draws up plays and has guys bringing him plays and everybody's balled in. And like, I think he just has a really good feel for what that locker room needs. And I think anybody else at head coach is not going to get the best out of Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. Even though Travis Kelce will be great, still, I just feel like what he can do for that entire team and that entire roster, and even letting go of guys like Tyreek Hill and finding a way to plug and play guys and figuring out through the season and changing the offensive game plan from the first quarter to the third quarter. Like, there's only so much Travis can do. You know what I'm saying? I just think Andy Reid has so much more decision-making power, and it, like the way that the plays called, the fourth and one, the plays that he's calling and put them in position, like I think that's a huge piece of like their success.
Yeah, very fair. And I don't think we'll actually be able to see because I think they'll both retire at the same time. I think Travis will come back for one more year, even though he hasn't been committed about that yet.
Yeah.
I think Travis and Andy will come back for one more year.
Yep.
And if they win it all, do they come back for one more year, or do you retire on like the only three-peat ever?
Yeah. I feel like everybody retires after the three-peat. Basketball,
Mahomes.
football, anybody like
Yeah,
With
everybody.
there we go.
Mahomes, you gotta
gets
go.
bored, yeah.
Okay, would you
one
sign
more
up
thing.
for that? Would you sign up for the Chiefs winning next year's Super Bowl if it meant Mahomes retires?
No.
Hell yeah.
You said no?
No.
Wow. Okay.
I want to beat him. I don't want to just.
Okay.
God,
I can respect that.
I just don't want to just be like, oh, he's finally out now. Now we have our shot. Like, no, I want to. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Even when Tom was winning, like, we just beat him. Like very easily, not easily, but could have won that Super Bowl 2015 had we not beat him,
of
or been
course,
to the
yeah.
Super Bowl in 2013 had we not beat him. Like, I think it's just on us as Broncos to go after the head of the snake and take it out.
That's what made it so much more bearable to see Brady have the success. Is he had the least amount of success against the Broncos in his entire career.
Yep.
That at least made it a little bit better.
Yeah, that.
And real quick, the
Light
reason
at the end of
I
the
lean
tunnel.
Kelce is mostly just because the rest of that offense. It's like if they still had Tyreek Hill and all those guys, then yeah, I'd take Andy Reid. But like you take Kelce out of that offense, like what do they even have?
I mean, Rashee Rice is really good, but
Yeah,
that
he's
would
good.
be it. That would be it.
Yeah,
But the
a top
schemes-
15, top 20 receiver.
So
Yeah.
what are we going with number 5? We have a very angry commenter or two in the comment
What'd they
section
say?
saying, how in the world are you guys not putting Sean Payton on this list?
as an obstacle?
Wow.
And
We had our best season in like 7 years.
Yeah.
some people are really done with Sean.
I
But
don't give anybody any time anymore.
I
like, you know
mean,
what
And even if
saying?
he didn't, like he added 3 wins to the record and had the best record since 2016.
And the thing about it is, like we talked about, we've kind of gotten used to the culture of losing, so it's gonna feel different to be like shifting to this culture of winning. Like you may not like it. There's some growing pains, but I think there's a lot to do that has to be changed from how it was and the early days of winning to how it's been for 6 or 7 years. And it's if you want to win, it's not gonna look like how it did the last 6 or 7 years, and it's
Yeah.
gonna feel uncomfortable because so much has to happen.
Yep.
and Sean said that he needed he'd be pissed off if he didn't make the playoffs, so he set the bar really high. They did come up short of that. So sure, you could say disappointing, but it was still the best we've seen since 2015, or I guess since 2016 technically. So no, I can't. I still believe in Sean, so I can't put him on this list.
Somebody said Joe Ellis did this. That's cool.
Someone said the Elway curse. What are we going?
Man.
Where are we rounding this out?
Well, I'm just looking through here. I realize why it's so hard to come up with a fifth. It's because if you got rid of Mahomes, the Broncos had a bunch of money to spend. They had a quarterback, and they didn't have a lack of talent. They'd win the Super Bowl. Like, it's really tough to come up with like a fifth thing when like that really, you solve those problems, you're good to go.
Oh, we didn't do the win now mentality.
Let's do that.
There we go. I like that.
Never rebuilt. Win now mentality. Yeah.
Yep. The everlasting win now mentality when you're definitely not winning now.
Yeah.
All right. There's our top 5 presented by Bet365. Let's hit the super chats that we have before we get out of here really quick. We've got one coming in from, I'm putting pressure on you here right now. We got one coming in from our friend Jose, who says, for his biggest obstacles, lack of identity for 8 years is number 1. Get Mahomes off the list. The Broncos have caused this to themselves with bad contracts, bad coaches, bad trades. There's no doubt the Broncos have not helped themselves. But like I said, the Mahomes is big. The Mahomes obstacle is bigger than just the Broncos. It's an AFC West problem. It's an AFC problem. It's an NFL problem. So this should probably be number 1 on every team's list, not just the Broncos.
Yeah, I mean, the Broncos are the reason they aren't getting wild card spots, but even if they were, Mahomes would be the reason why they're not really compete for Super Bowls.
Yeah, I think if we did make some better decisions, I think they wouldn't have won at least one Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Let's flip it this way too. Let's look at the Broncos from 2012 to 2015. Now 15, again, just the weirdest year to use for this, but do you think Peyton Manning wouldn't have been number 1 on the Chiefs, Chargers, and Raiders obstacle? He should have been.
Yep.
Like, absolutely, he should have been. Peyton Manning was unstoppable. The biggest headache for those teams. Probably the number 1 obstacle for every team in the NFL. There.
Tom Brady for the Jets, Dolphins, and Bills.
100%. Yes. Do you think they would have said he was their number 1 obstacle? Of course.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And that's just unfortunate right now. Is that it you hear? Man. That's it. We got to roll. We got to get out of here right now. But thank you all so much for tuning in. This was a fun conversation.
Yes.
Little debate. Some people loved us. Some people hated us. But as long as the Broncos have Nick Saban on the staff, I'm happy about it. And they got a younger Nick Saban. So thanks for pointing that out to me, Henry. We will be back tomorrow. There's some interesting quarterback developments going on with the Broncos that we're going to dive into. So you don't want to miss that conversation. We'll see you at 11 a.m. Denver time.
We all silly like the mayor.